Matthew chapter number 5. Continuing our series on the Sermon on the Mount, which is, I like to call it the crash course in the Christian life. It just gives you the basics of what you need to know. If you people get started off and walking with the Lord, and like, man, what are just some basic ideas that I need to wrap my mind around Christianity? It's a nice summary. I always point people to Matthew 5, 6, and 7. It is just a crash course in the Christian life. And we've been going through these passages in chapter 5 dealing with Jesus taking the law, taking the Old Testament, and applying the Beatitudes to them, or ramping up the law a little bit, making them how it was intended to be. And we find ourselves tonight in verse 38 through 42. And I'd like to read this one, and then we'll come back and make some connections. It says in Matthew 5:38, "Ye have heard that it hath been said, an eye for an eye, and a tooth for a tooth. But I say unto you, that ye resist not evil. But whosoever shall smite thee on the right cheek, turn to him the other also. And if any man will sue thee at the law, take away thy coat, let him have thy cloak also. And whosoever shall compel thee to go a mile, go with him twain. Give to him that asketh thee, and from him that would borrow of thee, turn not thou away." This next section is dealing with probably the most difficult section in a sense. Especially when you start looking at verse number 39, this idea of somebody hitting you and you turning the other cheek saying, go ahead and do it again. These are some of the most difficult passages of Scripture really to deal with. And these things seem impossible. Are you serious? How would I ever get to that? If I were to summarize this, what is this passage talking about? We've seen murder and anger. We've seen lust and adultery. We've seen adultery and divorce. We've seen swearing and oaths. And here we lay down the laws on revenge, or as I like to call it, raving. A little French from Terre Haute. You ever wanted to get back at somebody before? You ever had somebody wrong you that before you knew it, you started plotting on how you were going to get them back for what they did? I think all of us have been there at some point in our lives. Whether wittingly or unwittingly, we as people often hurt each other from time to time, do we not? And sometimes someone says something that rubs us the wrong way, or sometimes people can look at us a certain way and rub us the wrong way. And sometimes people can do things that just feel unfair or unjust. How could you do that to me? And if we're not careful, our mind can become a revenge factory where we start trying to lay out plots. How am I going to get them back? How am I going to get them back? You know, in a sense, that's a natural thing for us to do. Somebody hurts us, it only seems fair. It didn't take me long after being in public school to become my own little revenge factory inside the revenge factory. You want to see a revenge factory? Go to an elementary school. Those kids have no mercy on each other. You push me, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to push you. You take my stuff, I'm going to take your stuff. You kick me, I kick you. It's just a revenge factory over there. And growing up in public school, I don't know if I'll say it's a privilege, but it was definitely an experience. You kind of learned how to take care of yourself in a way. And there was really two philosophies that came at you while you were at public school. It would be from time to time that I would hear from credible sources, okay, people that I knew and trusted. They would say things like, hey, if somebody hits you, you know what you do? You hit them back. I heard that from credible sources. Or maybe you heard it this way. If somebody starts something with you, You know what you do? You finish it. People I know, people I respect, people even in my own family told me things like that. If somebody starts something with you out there on that schoolyard, well, you just get them right back. That's what I was told and heard from many different sources. And then I had my mother's words ringing in my ears. And she would say things along the lines of, two wrongs don't make a right. Which one is it? Because we hear both of these alternating philosophies all the time. We hear it all the time. It's not hard for us to hear. You know what? If somebody insults you, you just go right back at them. If somebody starts something with you or hurts someone you love, then you hurt someone else they love. Revenge. And it sounds so good. It sounds like it makes sense. It sounds fair. But Jesus is taking the law and he's getting to the heart of it again. Here in our passage, we see what he has to say about revenge. Number one, the letter of the law. And in verse 38 here, we see the Old Testament teaching. It says, ye have heard it said of old time, or heard it been said, an eye for an eye, and a tooth for a tooth. See? If somebody does something to you, you just hit, if they just get them right back. It's in the Bible. You're right. It is in the Bible, is it not? See, revenge is right. Let's take a little walk through the law and look at this. Let's go back to Exodus. Keep your place here. And I just want to walk through these laws and see them more in their totality. Let's go to Exodus chapter 21, and we're going to just check a couple passages so we can really get the feel of what's being said here, because this was a popular law, and it's still popular today. I mean, we've heard the phrase a million times, an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. We've heard this. Where is it at in the scripture? Let's look at it for ourselves. Well, we see here in Exodus 21, in verse 22 is our first passage. And it says, and just to get some context, verse 22, it says, if men strive, and that means to argue, and it means to quarrel, and it can even mean to get physical. If men are striving, they're fighting, and they hurt a pregnant woman with child, so that her baby dies, her fruit departs, and no mischief follows, he shall surely be punished, according as the woman's husband will lay upon him, and he shall pay as the judges determine. This is not the same sort of law, but it's warming up to it. And if any mischief follow, thou shalt give him life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burning for burning, wound for wound, stripe for stripe. So we see here a little bit of the first time we ever see this. We'll continue on a little bit more in 26. If a man smite the eye of his servant, or the eye of his maid, that it perish, the eye dies, he shall let him go for his eye's sake. And if he smite out his manservant's tooth or his maidservant's tooth, he shall let them go free for his tooth's sake. So you have this, what is fairness, what is equal, what is right? And here's where we first begin to see this idea of eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. Turn over to Leviticus, the next book over, Leviticus chapter 24. Leviticus chapter 24. And we will see the next instance, because this is spoken of again, just a little bit different context here. Leviticus 24. And we'll draw down to verse 17. He that killeth any man shall surely be put to death. There's the, again, capital punishment. That's where we get the idea. He that killeth the beast shall make it good, beast for beast. And if any man cause a blemish in his neighbor, As he hath done, so it shall be done to him. Breach for breach, eye for eye, tooth for tooth. As he hath caused a blemish in a man, so it shall be done to him again. And he that killeth beast shall restore it, and he that killeth man, he shall be put to death. So here again we see the law and what it says. One more I want to show you. Deuteronomy, 2 books over. Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy chapter 19. This will be our last passage in the Old Testament to kind of get an idea of what this law says. Deuteronomy chapter 19 and verse 19. Actually, let's start back at the beginning of the sentence here in verse 16. If a false witness rise up against any man to testify against him that which is wrong, verse 17, then both the men between whom the controversy is shall stand before the Lord, before the priests and the judges, which shall be in those days. And the judges shall make diligent inquisition. And behold, if the witness be a false witness, and he hath testified falsely against his brother, verse 19, then shall ye do unto him as he hath thought it to have done unto his brother. So shalt thou put away evil from among you. And those which remain shall hear and fear, and shall henceforth commit no such evil among you. Thine eye shall not pity, but life shall go for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot. Now, these are the major passages in the Old Testament that deal with this phrase, eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth. And as you can see, there are many other instances here. So what is this talking about, and what can we kind of summarize and deduce from these passages? These passages are teaching the law of fairness. And again, just like the other Old Testament laws that we looked at, this idea of eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth is not mandatory. It's not like you have to do this. If you have your eye taken out, you do not have to take the eye of another man, but the law allows for you to in the legal parameters, okay? Just like we've seen before, God doesn't like divorce, but he allows it. Just like we've seen before, God doesn't like killing, and sometimes he says life for life, but not everybody in the Bible that killed found the death penalty. This is the legal parameters, just as a modern day judge has the right to throw the book at somebody or to show mercy. The same was true here. And the book to be thrown in this situation, you could, depending on the situation, was eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth. But you didn't have to. Okay? In fact, I want to read to you Proverbs chapter 20, verse 22. Because this shows us the heart of the law. Solomon says, say not thou, I will recompense evil, but wait on the Lord, and he shall save thee. So even in the book of Proverbs, we see that you can take another road. You can take a road of mercy. You are allowed to go the road of justice, or you are allowed to go the road of mercy. That is what this here is saying. Okay, so not every situation was met that way. And Jesus here is imploring us to take the road of mercy. Because he says, back here in chapter 5, verse 39, but I say unto you that ye resist not evil. Was it lawful in Jesus' day to take an eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth? Yes, he was saying you have the right to do that. But here Jesus is saying, just like he's been saying in all these, I'm encouraging you to take a different road. You could go this way. You have every right to go this way according to the law. But I'm telling you that I want you to consider going this way. And isn't that not what God's life is for us? There are a lot of things that we could do. There's a lot of things that we could say. There's a lot of liberties and opportunities. And boy, we could get ours and get our just desserts if we wanted to. But often God calls us to sacrifice what maybe we are entitled to for a better way. And he's saying, here's a better way. You resist not evil. Now, you read it there in the King James, and it kind of doesn't make sense when you first read it. Resist means to stand against or oppose. And so this is literally saying, do not resist evil. Do not stand against or oppose evil. What do you mean by that? Do not stand against and oppose evil. Aren't we supposed to stand up for what's right? Aren't we supposed to stand up for the truth? Aren't we supposed to be for judgment and justice? He's saying here in a personal level that there is another way. I want to show you some more passages. Find Romans chapter 12. We're going to build a little doctrine here on what it means to resist not evil by looking at a couple New Testament passages. Let's start in Romans chapter 12. Bible study. We're Bible studying here. All right, I'm going to read this, and I want you to critically think to yourself, what can we learn from this passage about what it means to resist not evil? Or as Jesus saying, what does Jesus mean when he says resist not evil? Romans chapter 12 and verse 17. All right? Here we see a similar word. Recompense, which means to repay. Recompense to no man evil for evil. Provide things honest in the sight of all men. If it be possible, as much as lieth in you, live peaceably with all men. Wait. There's some bad dudes out there. There's some people out there that do not like me or like us because of our Christian beliefs. There are people out there that are mean and nasty and just pure evil, hateful people. And again, somebody hurts you, do not repay evil for evil. Be honest. Don't be deceitful as much as possible. Live peaceably with all men. Verse 19, dearly beloved, avenge not yourselves, but rather give place unto wrath, for it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay, saith the Lord. Therefore, if thine enemy hunger, do what? Feed him. If he thirst, what do? Give him to drink. For in so doing thou shalt heap coals of fire on his head. Be not overcome with evil, but overcome evil with good. Now there's a lot here. I started off with the richest passage in the New Testament on this, outside of what Jesus is saying and getting ready to look at here. But here he says, what he means by resist not evil is we don't do eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth anymore. Take a different road. You could take that road. That road is available to you. But could it be possible by taking that road, it's starting to stir up things in you that don't need to be stirred up? Could it be that it's a better way to let it go? Could it be it's a better way to be honest and to be peaceable? Yeah, but then you're going to let people just walk all over you. You can't let people just walk all over you in this world. And God's saying that he's not going to let people walk all over you. He's saying in verse number 19, I will take care of it. I will take care of it. Let me do it for you. See, we want to jump in and say our 2 cents and say, how dare you, and all these sort of things. And we may have the right to do that. But there's another option. And the other option is maybe I should just let God deal with it. And maybe if I have an opportunity to meet that person's need, I should meet that person's need. Maybe I do not need to fight evil with evil. Maybe I need to fight evil with good. Let me show you another passage in the New Testament. Turn over to 1 Thessalonians. Okay, a couple books over to the right. Romans, 1st and 2nd Corinthians, Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians, 1 Thessalonians chapter number 5. We see Paul again saying similar things. 1 Thessalonians chapter 5 and verse 15. He says, see that none render evil for evil unto any man, but ever follow that which is good, both among yourselves to all men. And it is saying here, you can deduce that when you do not give evil for evil, you are doing the good thing. You are doing the right thing. And then one more passage I want to show you. And then that's going to be in 1 Peter chapter 3. 1 Peter chapter 3. Hebrews, James, 1 Peter chapter 3 and verse number 9. So we've heard what Paul has to say and add to this. Now let's hear what Peter has to say in his commentary, talking to a suffering church. He says in 1 Peter 3:9, not rendering evil for evil or railing for railing. Railing has to do with what you say, insult to insult, but contrawise blessing, knowing that ye are thereunto called, and you should inherit a blessing. So here Peter tells us something, adds a little bit more information, that if we do resist, it's not just good, and we're not just letting God take care of it, but we are actually allowing a blessing to return upon us if we do the right thing, which I would say is the difficult thing of letting God deal with it. So, based upon these three passages that we've seen, not resisting evil means if someone does evil to you, do not return evil back. Do good to them, and God will bless you. This is what it's saying. If we just take it and pray about it and let God step in, then this will turn out as a blessing on our behalf. Now, two things about this, okay? Two areas that this is dealing with. This is dealing first in the area of ownership and in the area of trust. Do you trust God on this promise? It's a hard one to trust, especially if there is physical pain or insults involved. If it's personally harming us or someone we love, it is very hard for us to trust God on this principle. That's why it's so hard. And the second area it has to do with is ownership. And the question would be, who's in charge here? Who's better at dealing out judgment? Let's say somebody hurts something that you have or breaks something you have. Who owns that thing that you have? Are you the owner? Let's say somebody does slap your cheek. Whose cheek is that? Is that your cheek or God's cheek? Who made it? This has to do with trust and ownership. Now, let's go back to what Jesus said here and notice his illustrations, because we've seen, number one, the letter of the law, and now we're going to see, number two, the living of the law. And notice Jesus is showing us what this looks like. Now, some of these things are cultural, but they give us some very interesting areas for us to think about in the areas of trust and ownership. Back at verse 39, again, but I say unto you that you resist not evil. And then he gives us some proper reactions. The first proper reaction is concerning smiting, which he starts off with a difficult example. But whosoever shall smite thee on the right cheek, turn to him the other also. And he starts off with the tough one, the one that's literally like a slap in the face for us. Oh man, warm up to it a little bit. Can we start with somebody steps on your toe? Give them the other toe. Can we work up to somebody, bumps your knee, bump my knee? But you start with a slap in the face, which in some cultures is very insulting, especially in our culture. To be slapped in the face, that's a tough ask. But can I tell you that Jesus never gives a command that he is not willing to do by example? Isaiah 50, verse 6. I gave my back to the smiters, and my cheeks to them that plucked off my hair, and hid not my face from the shame and spitting. John chapter 18. He was smitten by the high priest's servant. In fact, I want to show you John chapter 18. Because this is important into it. It's worth seeing. John chapter 18. I want you to notice something about this. I want you to notice how Jesus responds to getting slapped in the face during his quote-unquote trial that he had the night before his crucifixion. If you look at John chapter 18 and verse number 22. Of course, Jesus here is standing before the high priest, and they say in verse number 21, why askest thou me? Ask them which heard me. What have I said unto them? Behold, they know what I said. Jesus is defending himself to their accusations about his doctrine. And then in verse 22, and when he had thus spoken, one of the officers which stood by struck Jesus with the palm of his hand, saying, answerest thou the high priest so? And Jesus answered, if I have spoken evil, bear witness of the evil, but if well, why smitest thou me? See, notice that in Jesus' response in this situation, it's not like he didn't stand up for himself. It's not that he didn't have a plea for justice. It's not that he just took it and didn't respond in any way. He responded properly because he was in full control of the situation. And so it's not like if somebody does something wrong, you can't say, why did you do that? Why are you doing that? There is a place to respond, and there is a proper way to respond. We're not going to look at the passage, but if you wanted to, you could look at Acts chapter 23 and verse number 1. Paul is before we believe the same high priest, and he is slapped on the face for his response. And Paul even gets a little bit more testier than Jesus does. And he says, God shall smite thee. And then he calls him a whited wall, which is not a nice word, not a nice thing to say. Saying he's a hypocrite. For sittest thou to judge me after the law, and why commandest me to be smitten contrary to the law? And they that stood by said, revilest thou God's high priest? And Paul said, I wished or I wish not, brethren, that he was a high priest, for it is written, thou shalt not speak evil of the ruler of thy people. It appears that Paul crossed the line a little bit in his response and backed up just a little bit. But nonetheless, we look at this and be like, well, I don't know if you could do that. Just let somebody slap you in the face. Now, again, how often has this happened to you? How many out of all the hours you lived, there are very few hours where we are in physical danger. And he is employing us. And the idea here is we are in the right, we are doing the right thing, we are serving God, we are going about our business, and we, for whatever reason, come across some sort of resistance. We're trying to do the right thing, and somebody hauls off and smacks us. What are you supposed to do? And he says, don't fight back. He says there's a different road. This is about trust and ownership. Verse 40 of Matthew chapter 5 says concerning suing, if there's a man that will sue thee at the law and take away thy coat, let him have thy cloak also. Now the difference between a coat and a cloak, one is an outward garment, one is one that goes underneath. The cloak is the one that goes underneath. And he's saying this is an example of somebody that is doing wrong, just like the last person that was smiting you or hitting you was doing wrong. Here's a person that's doing it with the law even. And they are taking advantage of you. And he says, don't just give them your coat, give them your cloak too. Why would I do that? Because this is an area of trusting in ownership. Could this be the better path? Could this be the right thing? Could this possibly be the way? And then the third example is concerning service. Verse 41, and whosoever shall compel thee to go a mile, go with him twain. Now, we are familiar with this. If you have not heard this, what this is referring to is the Roman law that was during the time of Jesus, that any soldier could walk up to any Jew at any time and command that Jew, no matter what they were doing, to take their armor and their gear and to walk with them a mile. And a mile in the Roman sense was 1,000 paces. You were required that at any time, it didn't matter if you were trying to get, down to the market to get some food, to get home to your sick wife, a Roman soldier sees you, they can stop you and say, take my gear and walk with me a mile at any time. This is not really anything that we have in our culture, but nonetheless, there can become times where we are asked to do things by people that we are under the authority of that ask us to do things that are inconvenient for us or a hardship for us. And Jesus says, whenever this comes and it's a hardship, don't just walk 1 mile with them. Why don't you just go ahead and walk 2? Why? Why would I do that? Because there could be a better way. Now, let me ask you a question. If you were a person that would slap somebody on the face and they responded by turning the other cheek, what would that make you think? If you were trying to sue somebody for their coat and they said, you know what, here's my coat, but go ahead and take my cloak also, what would you think? If you asked somebody out of a burden to do something that was hard for them, whatever would parallel walking a mile, and they went with you an extra mile, what would that do to your mind? What would you say? That's not normal. Something different's going on here. Boy, this person's having a better attitude than I thought. Wow, it's hard to get under this person's skin. And could it be that, if I could use the final phrase here, going the extra mile, that's what all these can be summarized by. Could it be that that could be the thing that draws someone closer to Christ? I have the right to, I have the ability to reject, say no, or resist, or desist, but instead I submit myself because I trust God and He is my owner. And notice verse 42 as well as we conclude here. Proper reactions, yes, but also proper respect. Verse 42, he says, give to him that asketh thee. And from him that would borrow of thee, turn not away. Wait. Somebody comes up to me and says, give me some money, I got to give it to him. Somebody comes up to me and says, let me borrow something, and I don't know, if they're going to give it back or they're reliable or what. I don't have to go through an interview process here. I should just give. This seems kind of foolish. Or maybe it's the wisest thing. Jesus is saying something, and he's talking about trust and ownership. If somebody comes to you and they ask you for something, and they ask you to give something, who owns what you are asked to give? And somebody wants to borrow something, who owns what they are requesting to borrow? Could this just be a trust issue? 2 things he's trying to say. Don't be vengeful and don't be stingy. Don't be vengeful and don't be stingy when it comes to God's people, because it could be when you are going the extra mile and you are being generous, it just could be that God will bless you and use that in somebody else's life. Now, it's easy for us to say, you know what, I just don't trust that principle. I think it's wrong. I don't see that. I think it's wrong. I'm telling you, there may be an opportunity that God will give you this week to try it out in little ways. Sometimes we're asked to go the extra mile for even people we love. Do things that are hard for us even within our own home. Are you willing to do that? Are you willing to give? And I would say before we ever reach out, it's got to start in our homes and in our church. Because if we can't do it here, how in the world are we going to do it out there? I wanted to read you a story of an Old Testament example of this. And it's in 2 Samuel chapter 16. We don't have time to read it. But the story is of David kicked out of his home because his son Absalom has taken over the throne. And instead of fighting his son, which he had the right to do, he runs. He goes into exile on his own decision. And as he's going into exile, there's this guy named Shimei, who is a Benjamite, who's a big fan of King Saul, and doesn't like the fact that this guy from Bethlehem, Judah, is the king. When his people, the Benjamites, were in control, now he's now got a new king, and he doesn't like him because he's not from his tribe. So he goes out there to see David as he's walking down the road. David's got his head hang low. He's got his family with him. He has his soldiers with him. He's leaving his palace because of this time. The pressure is hot. And then all of a sudden, this guy named Shimei starts throwing rocks at him and cursing him, kicking dust up, calling him a bloody man because of what he did to Saul. And Abishai, the nephew of King David, who's a mighty man, you read stories about him, goes up to David and says, King, let me go over here to this guy and take his head off, which he had the right to do. Let me take this guy's head off for what he's saying to you right now. And David looks over at his nephew, one of his mighty men, Abishai, and says, let's not do that. He says, what have I to do with thee, thou son of Zeruiah? That was his sister's name. Let him curse. For God hath told him to curse. And it just could be that if I just let this go, that God will reward me mercy in my situation. And if you read the story, God does. God does give him mercy. And he comes back. And this guy who was throwing rocks one day was begging for forgiveness the next day. Why? Because it was about trust and ownership. He trusted God to take care of it, and God did. It's a hard thing to do. It's difficult, especially when somebody hurts us. Our pride wells up. We want to get revenge. We want to start plotting. We want to be that revenge factory. But Jesus said, could it be that there's a better way? And I think there is. Father, help us tonight as we deal with scriptures that are very different and difficult. Help us to trust you when it comes to how we respond to people. There are people that hurt us often, sometimes strangers, sometimes we don't even know who they are, come out of nowhere and are rude and are mean. And Lord, it's easy for us to retaliate. Help us to do the hard thing and to trust you. And I pray, Lord, that in these times of sufferings, that you would avenge us if need be, and that you would use us to draw people closer to the Lord. Thank you for this principle. In Jesus' name, amen. Hey, I want to give you a couple quick announcements, and then I will let you go. A couple things real quick. First of all, when it comes to announcements, this Saturday, we have two events going on. One of them is a door hanger event, which kids are going to meet here at 11 o'clock. If you would like to go out and put flyers on doors, that'd be great. Sign up if you'd like to come so we know how many hamburgers to prepare. Youth group door hanger day at 11 o'clock. And then the Lighthouse mission is on the 17th at 4:30. Sunday, we are going to be having a graduation party in the evening for Emily Williams. She's actually graduating from Bible Baptist Christian Academy on Friday. She's having a graduation party at her home on Saturday, and the church would like to do something for her on Sunday night. We're going to have some cake and ice cream, something very simple. If you would like to get a card for Emily, I would encourage you to do that. And if you say, well, I'd like to get a card, but I wouldn't be able to make it on Sunday night. If you want to just leave your card with me or on the welcome table, I'll make sure that it's taken care of and it gets to her. So if you want to think about that, but I'm going to send out a reminder tomorrow through the text messaging group about this. And so I just want to encourage everybody to celebrate Emily's big day. And we're excited for her and thankful for her. And you only graduate once from high school. So wonderful thing. 31st is Adopt a Highway Day. Sign up for that. On the 25th is our PCC Proclaim group. Looking forward to that. And then Anniversary Sunday is coming up on the 6th of June. Fried chicken. It's going to be a wonderful time. All right. Thank you so much for coming tonight. Please, you are dismissed. If you'd like to take some food home, I'm sure there's some to-go boxes back there. And